The following compilation features unsettling and spine-chilling tales sourced from Reddit's horror communities. Reader discretion is strongly advised. These narratives may contain graphic descriptions, psychological distress, and themes that could unsettle sensitive individuals. Proceed with caution, as immersion into these eerie stories may provoke fear, unease, and sleep disturbances. Enter this realm of Reddit's creepy horror stories at your own risk, as the line between reality and the macabre may blur within these chilling narratives. The worst part about insomnia is the boredom. Nothing open except for the seedy places. Nobody awake except for the seedy people. Nothing to do except watch movies and eat sunflower seeds. Seriously, fuck insomnia. My sleep capacity generally comes and goes in waves, but the few weeks before I found Hal's were especially rough. There was no inciting incident, just that general feeling of restlessness and anxiety that has become a familiar friend over the years. I tried all of the standard assists: warm milk, old movies, cut down on my caffeine intake, all the usual things that people recommend but never work. Eventually, more out of boredom than anything else, I took to taking late-night walks through the city. I worked a shitty job as a projectionist at a local movie theater, and on the weekends I didn't often get off work until the last movie finished, and the city had long since wound down by the time I was free. The first week or two I stayed towards the well-lit areas populated by the intoxicated, both rich and poor, but while the people watching was always good, I quickly grew tired of the relentless noise and began wandering off the beaten path. I'm not sure how I'd never noticed Hal's before. I distinctly remembered buying smokes at the dilapidated gas station across the street on several occasions, and I'm sure my eyes would have been drawn to the large storefront windows still brightly lit and welcoming at 3 a.m. The neon sign pronouncing it Hal's low-cost thrift and consignment glowed in garishly conflicting colors, except for the first S, which was burnt out. Of course, I would come to realize that there were very good reasons I had never seen it before, but that first night I wondered if maybe I was hallucinating from sleep deprivation. I entered. Of course, even if I didn't feel the need to validate that the whole thing wasn't just a figment of my imagination, there was no way I was denying my curiosity. It was probably the smell that I noticed first, kind of a combination of burning sage and rancid meat, but in a weirdly good kind of way. Best thing I can compare it to is a beach bonfire at low tide. The place was packed full of merchandise, all displayed very neatly on row after row of shelving, but without any sign of clear organization. Knickknacks sat on the same shelves as old magazines and jumper cables. A bizarre collection of artwork decorated the walls, from shadow boxes holding sports paraphernalia to Pink Floyd posters to copies of famous impressionist paintings. The wall furthest from the front entrance was actually just an unbroken line of doors. Each door was crafted in an entirely different style, and each painted a different color to create a full-length pride flag along the wall. In the center, the green door actually appeared to be an elevator, which really just raised additional questions. I began to browse the first aisle to the left of the front door. A full silver-plated dining set, a clown costume, a chainsaw without a chain, 4 cookbooks, a Super Soaker XP100 already filled with water, several fake antique-looking religious relics such as crosses and Buddha heads, and a full-length evening cloak that made me immediately start contemplating a career as a supervillain, if for no other reason than I would look amazing in it. I browsed several more aisles with a bemused smile on my face as the truly eclectic inventory continued to defy any clear organizational sense, until a gruff voice cleared its throat. I glanced up to see the shopkeeper behind the front counter staring at me. He was a medium-sized man, but held a clear "don't fuck with me" aura around him. His head was shaved bald, and his arms and shoulders indicated someone who had spent more than a few years working in trades. "Can I help you find something?" he asked, his voice a low grumble that ran the line between professionalism and wanting to throw your ass to the curb. I shot him one of my patented disarming smiles. "Not really, I'm just browsing." He continued to stare for a moment, his eyes probing, as if searching for a way to sort me into one of the Jungian archetypes that all retail employees have for their customers. "Incubus?" he asked. Finally. "Excuse me, are you an incubus?" he responded, his eyes still searching mine. "No, Gemini, actually. Well, on the cusp with Cancer, really. I didn't think people actually used the astrology pickup in real life. I gotta ask, do you get a lot of success with that one? With nostalgia being all the rage these days. Going for one of the classic pickup lines is actually a brilliant idea." The corner of the man's mouth twitched just for a moment before returning to its painted-on scowl. That immediately put me at ease. Couldn't work the late-night shift without having that hard shell of an exterior. But if I could touch a sense of humor, he probably wouldn't be throwing me out anytime soon. "I don't get a lot of people coming in here just to browse," he said, his voice having moved slightly away from the gravelly grumble he was using before. Less Bob Dylan, more Bob's Burgers. Most know exactly what they want by the time they lay eyes on this place. I shrugged. What can I say? I'm an impulsive sort. "Hey, how much is this?" I lifted up a snow globe that held what looked like a large hospital. The shopkeeper raised an eyebrow. "Good eye, that's $200. I whistled, immediately placing it carefully back on the rack. Pricey for a paperweight. Collector's item. There are a lot of stories inside that little snow globe. You could probably get a couple thousand from the right buyer if you're fine dealing with that kind of person. I take it since you're selling it for $200. You're not fine with that?" The corner of the shopkeeper's mouth twitched again. I could tell he was warming to me. "I'm pretty sure you're not here for that old thing anyways." "What am I here for then?" "I'm not sure yet. Keep browsing. I'm sure you'll find it." I did as I was told. An antique set of writing quills, what looked like a defunct Tesla coil, a compass and a sextant, a typewriter, a VCR, a few old board games I had never heard of, and a few other raggedy children's toys, including an actual Raggedy Ann doll. Nothing really struck my fancy until I was flipping through a rack of clothing and came across a treasure. I delightedly snatched it up and approached the front counter, placing it in front of the shopkeeper. He raised another eyebrow at me, and I beamed a smile at him in return. "I've always wanted one of these," I chortled. The shopkeep shook his head and pressed a few buttons on the archaic register. Not Faye then. Never met a Faye with a decent sense of humor. For the white t-shirt with "I'm with stupid" written on it, that'll be $1.53. I fished a handful of coins out of my pocket and counted out exact change. He took it and sorted the money into the correct slots. He looked back up at me and shook his head. "This has got to be the dumbest sale I've made this year. I'm not even sure why that was on the rack." "Hey, I'm not complaining," I said, pulling the new purchase over the shirt I was already wearing. "Did you just open? I walk by this area pretty often, and I'm sure I've never seen you here before." The man's smile came out fully into the open. "Yes and no. We've been in business for a long time, but I guess you could say we're new to the area." "Well, I hope you stick around for a while." "Hull," I said, nodding with feigned understanding as I extended my hand. "You've got a bunch of weird shit in here, and there aren't many other places for me to go shopping at this time of night." "Butch," the shopkeeper replied, shaking my outstretched hand. "Excuse me? My name's Butch, not Hal. What the hell would the owner be doing working the front counter at 3 a.m.? I threw my head back and laughed. I stand corrected. Butch grinned. "So not an incubus, not a fae, not a vamp. What the hell are you doing in my shop?" I raised an eyebrow. "Buying vintage clothing? Apparently." "No, seriously. What's your deal? Shapeshifter, Wendigo, cannibal?" "Dude, I've worked enough retail to know all about the normal customer archetypes, but I think you've lost me on these. Is a shapeshifter one of those shoplifters who keeps showing up in different clothes like they're actually fooling anyone?" Butch looked at me in perplexity, but a little bell rang announcing the arrival of another customer before he could continue his line of questioning. We both glanced towards the door instinctually, and I suddenly also began wondering what the hell I was doing in this store. The woman who had just entered was tall, disturbingly tall. At least that was my first impression. I soon realized, though, that she wasn't actually tall. She was just floating a solid 2 feet off the ground. She wore a long, pale white and semi-transparent dress that fell clearly past her feet and dragged gently on the floor. A white veil was pinned to her unkempt mane of dark hair and spread across her face. That veil did nothing to disguise the bloodshot and sorrowful eyes, the broken nose, nor the mouth that hung open to the center of her chest, leaving a large black void from her cracked and broken top teeth to well past her neck. I recoiled in horror, slipping and falling directly onto my ass before scooting myself back until my back hit a rack of shelves and a hairy, taxidermied hand fell onto my lap. I held it up in preparation to do battle should I need to. The spectre, however, paid me absolutely no mind. She merely glided down one of the aisles, raised her hand to delicately select something off a shelf, and then floated back up to Butch's counter. "Evening, Maeve. Just the usual?" Butch asked casually. The woman's cavernous mouth seemed to open wider, and a reverberating moan began to vibrate my soul. It wasn't loud, but it suddenly reminded me of the sound I heard my mother make over my grandfather's deathbed when I was 9 years old. "All right, gorgeous. It's 4:50. The woman in white reached out a hand limply and dropped a handful of crumpled bills on the counter. She then turned and slowly glided out of the door. My shaking hands continued to point the furry limb at her long past the point she was out of sight. "Throat louncenges," stated Butch. I swept the leg to point at him, my heart still racing and my eyes wide. Butch seemed unconcerned. "Maeve comes in every night for a pack. Her work leaves her throat pretty sore. I'm not sure if they do much good, but it's always the regulars who keep a business afloat." "That was a fucking banshee," I almost screamed. Butch's eyebrows raised as though impressed. "Wow," he said. "I'm impressed. Most humans wouldn't recognize one on sight. Hey, could you stop pointing that thing at me? They can get a little unpredictable if you're not used to them." I kept my impromptu weapon trained on him for another moment before allowing my hand, still tightly clenched, to fall into my lap. I continued to breathe shakily for another moment and tried to get my head straight. "I'm sorry," I said once I felt like I could speak without screaming. "That was really not something I expected to see tonight." "What the fuck? Butch? Banshees are fucking real, and they come in here every night for pharyngitis treatment. What the fuck is this place?" I realized my voice was starting to gain volume again. I stopped, swallowed, and took another raspy breath. "Sorry," I said again. "I've never reacted well when I get really scared. Believe me, I wish that didn't happen to me." But the thing still clasped in my hand suddenly lurched. I curiously glanced down at it, only just then fully noticing what I had been clenching in my fist. "Fuck, this is a monkey's paw, isn't it?" "Yeah, you may want to put that down before you make another wish," said Butch, an amused smile on his face. "Why, what did I say?" "Still scared." "Of what?" "Oh, right. Ugly banshee chick." "Nah, I'm good now. Why do my pants smell bad?" Butch rolled his eyes. "Go ahead and grab a new pair. No charge." "Nice. Can I use your bathroom?" He nodded towards the far wall of the shop. "Purple door. I'd avoid opening any others if I were you. Spoil sport. Is that elevator real?" "Yep. And no, I'm not answering any follow-up questions until I can't smell you anymore." 10 minutes later, I was feeling much cleaner, if slightly chilly, in my newly bought I'm with stupid t-shirt and newly gifted cum-slut booty shorts. I must have been starting to grow on Butch, because other than another twitch of his mouth and slight shake of his head, he didn't much react to my change in style. "So you're actually just straight human, aren't you?" he asked ruefully. I can't think of another species that would so flagrantly disregard their own self-respect. Never seen the video of the otter raping a decapitated fish head, have you? You know what I mean. Even the blood orgy folk will still show up in something tailored at least. "Butch, you just had a floating girl in here wearing funeral clothes." "Versace. Maeve's taste is old-fashioned, but always quality." I paused with my mouth open, before shutting it slowly. All right then, I guess I stand corrected. Should I change so I don't offend the blood orgy folk? I finally got a full laugh from Butch. What's your name? Kid? Clear. Sorry? Clear. Middle name is Water. My parents were hippies, also big fans of revivals. Man, thought I drew the short straw when it came to names. But you've got me beat. So what? The shop bell rang again. Unlike with the previous customer, I felt not even the slightest twinge of fear as the latest monster strolled casually into the building. 6.5 feet tall and covered in reddish-brown fur, the man with the overtly canine face was sporting a cordial grin. The werewolf nodded casually at Butch and began strolling the aisles. Butch nodded back and then raised an eyebrow at me as though interested in my newfound stoicism. "Well?" he asked, as if unsure whether or not I was going to shit myself again. "I can't believe you gave me a hard time about my booty shorts and then didn't blink at that guy dropping werewolf dong." Butch grunted in satisfaction. Guess that monkey's paw was the real deal. I should bump up the price. "You didn't know." He shook his head. "It's good policy not to fuck around with a monkey's paw." Had a feeling it was legit. Though, a lot of the other stuff we got from that particular estate ended up being pretty extraordinary. There was a pause. "Such as?" I demanded. "Come on, dude. You can't drop that line and then not show off a bit." Butch laughed again and turned around to the display wall behind the counter. He pulled down a shadow box and laid it on the counter in front of me. Inside was an almost cartoonishly large revolver, 6-chamber, but with a bulbous barrel that could have fired a skee ball. There were 3 huge rounds already loaded, but with no caliber that I recognized. "You seem like the kind of guy who would appreciate this." He opened the case and gestured for me to pick it up. I did, immediately surprised by its apparent weightlessness. I spun it around my finger, gunslinger style, and leveled it harmlessly towards the doors at the end of the hall. The werewolf glanced up at me curiously for a moment before returning to his shopping. "Love the way it handles, but I don't recognize the make." "One of a kind," Butch said. "They call it the Chekhov gun." I laughed. "Seriously, guess I have to fire it then." "Huh?" "Probably, but I wouldn't waste the ammo if you don't have to. Those 3 rounds are all there are left." "How very hackneyed," I said, examining one of the rounds. "These things seem a bit unnecessary, unless you're hunting kaiju. What are they?" "I've just taken to calling them MacGuffins. I've only seen it used once, during a debate over the bathroom being only for paying customers. One thing led to another, and a full army of vampires ended up laying siege to the shop. Had to have been at least 400 or 500 of them. Hal shot off a round from this and it fired an actual sun. Gave me second-degree burns on every exposed inch of skin, but it fried every last one of those fuckers." "Wait, it shoots a sun?" I asked incredulously, cautiously setting the gun back on the counter. "No, it shoots whatever it has to get the job done," Butch explained. "That makes no sense whatsoever. You do realize there's a werewolf browsing through old Megadeth CDs 10 feet behind you, right?" I turned around and locked eyes with the large, hairy fellow for a moment. His tongue lolled out of the side of his mouth in a wolfish smile, and he winked at me. "I mean, I get what you're saying, but I still think there's a big difference between ancient legends and a relatively modern literary construct." Butch opened his mouth to respond, but at that moment the door slammed open with enough force to cause the lights to flicker. I glanced over my shoulder at the darkened doorway, noticing Butch's hand move to rest lightly on the Chekhov gun on the counter. The werewolf's hackles raised as a low growl began to rumble from his direction. The man in the doorway seemed human enough. If high-stakes lawyers could be considered human, that is, he was tall, but not intimidatingly so. His suit was well tailored, his hair immaculate. The charming smile on his face belied the cold contempt in his eyes. "Hey, Butch," he said, his voice a purring baritone. "Hey, Azzy. Long time no see," Butch replied, his face devoid of emotion. "Way too long." The man pulled a coin from his pocket and began rolling it back and forth across his fingers. "Is your boss around?" "You know I haven't seen Hal in months. Not since that incident with the Purgatory delegation." Paychecks are still rolling in though, so he's out there somewhere. If you find him, let him know I'm taking the fender for a Christmas bonus. Az shook his head in feigned disappointment. It really would be in your best interest to help me track him down. Butch, you know the deal he made to run this place expired at the end of last month. Now my employer has a lot of respect for the old man and everything he's done over the years, so he's more than willing to renegotiate the terms. Butch shook his head. You're not hearing me. Az, I don't know where the guy is, and I don't have any way of getting a hold of him. Come on, you really mean to tell me your boss can't suss out where he is? I'm starting to get why his little rebellion failed. Still not sure how he duped all you idiots into following his lead. Though, was that like a Trump thing? Az's eyes narrowed. That's low even for you, Butch. I laughed involuntarily. I don't know. Men, if the MAGA hat fits. Suddenly a force slammed into me, hurling me over the counter and against the wall behind the register. Shock shuddered through my body as a display hook pierced my shoulder. A flood of moisture spread down my back, and I immediately started feeling a little woozy, also a lot pissed. I jerked my head up to glare at Az. Motherfucker, I just bought this shirt. I felt myself reverse direction, flying off the wall and across the store. I flailed painfully as I soared, managing to tip over one of the racks before colliding with the werewolf. I couldn't help but marvel at how soft he was as we hit the floor and slid into another rack, bringing its contents down on us. I always envisioned werewolf fur as being more coarse, I thought as I weighted out the falling inventory. Sorry, Jack, I muttered, rolling away from the werewolf and painfully climbing to my feet. Cool if I call you Jack. Never caught your actual name. Jack growled, shaking his head like a wet dog. I don't know why you have to make me hurt your friends before you tell me what I want to know. Butch, you know how much it pains me to hurt innocent bystanders. Butch was levitating over the cash register, his limbs shaking violently as he appeared to reflexively attempt to swallow his own tongue. I started grabbing anything within reach and throwing it at Az. I managed to score a direct hit with a tea kettle and an old computer mouse, but it was the lawn dart directly to the head that finally got his attention. Butch took in a raspy breath and fell to the ground as Az's head spun around to glare at me. His hand shot up and I felt my windpipe close. My hands instinctively went to my neck as I tried desperately to take in air. Idiot child, rasped Azzy, his eyes appearing a dull red as the edges of my vision began to darken. Do you have any idea who you're... I lost the rest of his sentence as Jack launched himself into Az, and the two of them flew into another rack. I fell to my knees, sucking in air and letting the world come back into focus. It sounded like Jack got one or two good swipes in with his vicious-looking claws before he flew backwards again, crashing through one of the doors at the back of the store. What lay beyond remained unknown, as the door immediately reformed behind him, pulling back in its shattered wood until no trace of damage remained. Az's head came bobbing into sight over the racks. I got back to my feet. This whole lack of fear thing was really starting to grow on me. You can force choke me all you want, Father, I snarled at him. We both know you're just a whiny little sand-hating bitch. Az's face was filled with fury as he raised his hand to smite me again. Suddenly Butch stepped between us, the Chekhov gun leveled squarely at Az's head. Az's look turned to one of contempt, but his hand still lowered slightly. How many of those bullets are you down to? Butch? He asked. 2, 3. Are you really sure you want to waste one on little old me? What? Then, will you use on the one he sends after me? Or the one after that? Eventually, the big man himself will want to come. Better hope you still have at least one left for him. My eyes fell on another gun that had fallen onto the floor in the struggle, one that I had noticed on my first walk through of the aisles. A stupid idea popped into my head. I reached down and grabbed it, cocking it loudly as I leveled it towards Az. Step aside. Butch, I growled. Butch shot a look back at me, saw what I held, and gave me a tight grin as he lowered the Chekhov gun and stepped out of my way. I squeezed the trigger on the Super Soaker XP100 and sent a stream of water directly into Az's face. His scream was piercing as the smoke immediately started pouring off his melting face. I stepped towards him, continuously pumping more water as I adjusted my stream to any piece of exposed skin, his squirming left exposed. "The power of Christ compels you." "Bitch," I yelled as I stood over him, furiously pumping the squirt gun. "Don't fuck with retail workers." Flesh fell from the demon's bones like really good barbecue ribs, bubbling into vapor from the floor. His screams became so high-pitched that I heard a few of the more delicate glass items in the shop shatter. I didn't let up on the stream of water until the plastic toy lost pressure and dribbled to a stop. Az collapsed, his clothes falling into a pile on the floor as his body steamed away. I stood panting, feeling the adrenaline burning off my skin. My shoulder, forgotten during the fight, began to throb painfully and the squirt gun slipped from my grasp. "Did you seriously just use a Pulp Fiction line on me?" I looked up at Butch in surprise and started to laugh. I mean, how often am I really going to have an opportunity like that? I just couldn't resist. He chuckled along with me. "How'd you know that Super Soaker would work?" "You made it pretty easy to figure out what he was with all that boss's rebellion talk. And I thought with the kind of shit you have in here, there was a pretty decent chance that thing was filled with holy water. Anyway, if it wasn't, I knew you'd probably just look at me like I was an idiot and shoot him with the Chekhov gun instead. So you know, what the hell?" He chuckled again and walked over to me to examine my shoulder. "How's it look?" I asked through gritted teeth. "I mean, you're going to need stitches, probably, but I don't think you're going to bleed out anytime soon." I nodded, then glanced over at the back of the shop towards the door Jack had disappeared through. "Is he going to be all right?" I asked. "Jack," he replied. "Yeah, he'll be fine. He's a pretty solid guy, has friends everywhere. I'm sure someone over there will put him up until he finds his way back." Holy shit, his name really is Jack. I thought I was just being clever. Nobody knows his real name. Actually, he doesn't talk much, but most people end up landing on that joke eventually, so it's kind of just stuck. Ow, my self-esteem. I deadpanned. "What's over there?" "Over where?" "You said someone over there will put him up. What's over there?" "Oh, that door leads to the back rooms. It opens up somewhere different every time, so you usually have to find another way back if you go through it." I nodded, not really understanding, but increasingly distracted by the radiating pain in my shoulder. "Well, let me know next time you see him. I think I owe that guy a beer. Next question. Where is the nearest hospital?" He grinned. "Come on, I'll patch you up. Gotten pretty good at it over the years, working this job. Only lost a couple dozen patients." I nodded and followed as he led to another door behind the cash register. He stopped with his hand on the knob. "Oh, and remember how I was trying to figure out why you ended up finding this place? I think I figured it out. Want a job?" I looked at him. I thought about the banshee, and the monkey's paw, and the werewolf, and the demon. Then I thought about the long series of dead-end, boring jobs I'd had up until this point. "Do you have a dental plan?" My third week working at Hal's found me shoveling harpy shit. The filthy birds used their horrifically scarred, twisted, and just generally unattractive human heads to hurl insults at me as the sweat dripped down my face. Cleaning this particular cage was always rough, as the dirty hybrids took a great deal of joy in trying to add to the mess faster than I could clean it. My poop cart was half full of a variety of dung, having already cleaned out the unicorn, chupacabra, thunderbird, and yeti cages. I'm not sure exactly what bizarre combination of chemistry and magic was happening, but somehow the scent emanating from the cart reminded me of quality chicken parmesan. "Hey, cocksucker, liking that smell. Want a taste from the sauce?" screeched Blanche from high above me. The four disgusting creatures laughed raucously and started lobbing down additional work for me to enjoy. Rose fluttered down to stare at me. "If you're going to be doing butt stuff with us, you're going to need some lube," and she spat directly at my face. I swung up my pitchfork to block, the spittle immediately sizzling through one of the tines and dripping to the straw-covered floor. "Rose," I said sternly, "if you ruin my equipment, I'm just going to head back to the thrift shop and you can spend the next week swimming in compost." Rose snorted at me and flapped her way back up the perches where her sisters sat chortling. I slipped back on my headphones to drown out the screeching vitriol and continued with my chores. Internally, I reminded myself that I was still in my training period, which, much like many of my previous jobs, mostly consisted of doing all the work that Butch didn't want to do. Still though, I thought as I used the remaining part of the pitchfork to lift another load of rancid harpy shit. This was better than working at Denny's. Despite the intrinsically unpleasant nature of the cleanup, I genuinely enjoyed spending time in the menagerie. 10-year-old me had been utterly obsessed with cryptids, so getting the opportunity to crawl into a large pen and cuddle with a couple dozen jackalopes was kind of a dream come true, not to mention the weekly poker games with the centaurs. I had doubled my first paycheck when I realized they were incapable of understanding the concept of bluffing. Half an hour later, and I could finally walk across the harpy cage and actually feel the firmness of the floor beneath my feet. Exhaling explosively, I pulled the wheelbarrow out of the cage, locked the door behind me, and leaned tiredly against the bars. I allowed my eyes to wander around the store as I tried to will my muscles into relaxation. Much like the thrift shop, the menagerie seemed to have been organized by an utter madman. Large beasts were housed next to tiny, predators next to prey, those capable of speech across from those who mostly just roared or screeched. The only exception was the largest animals, dragons, mammoths, the bipolar cyclops, etc., who were all held by the far west wall where the ceiling was highest. A soft bell rang as a customer entered. I stabbed the pitchfork into the pile of waste, pulled off my headphones, and began walking towards the front to make myself available. Behind me, Dorothy made a comment on my backside that would have been flattering from anyone else and sent another bomb through the bars to splatter at my feet. I was fully prepared to launch into a formal retail greeting, but my words caught in my throat as I saw who had entered. Dark hair, full lips, green-grey eyes that pierced through every defense I possessed, a low-cut blouse that presented a couple very convincing reasons to break eye contact. This woman's beauty was otherworldly, actually. Considering the nature of most of my clientele, otherworldly was probably more literal than literary. She smiled at me and I forgot my standard greeting, my name, and how to breathe. Hey there, new guy, she purred softly. King illegal forest to pig wild killin' it is, I responded wittily. She blinked. Well, that one's new. Excuse me for a moment. I turned and walked over to the barrel full of coconut rum I had prepared to feed the rougarou and dunked my head in, taking in a few large mouthfuls. I re-emerged, dripping, cold, and a little queasy from the taste. Let me try that again, I said. Nothing like a full immersion in alcohol to help talk to a woman way out of your league. Hi, welcome to Hal's low-cost menagerie. My name's Clear. How can I help you? The woman smiled broadly. I must say, you handled that better than a lot of men. A lot of things get easier once a guy embraces his own idiocy. What brings you in today? Ingredients, food, or companionship? I actually just needed to have a word with Butch. Is he around? Butch should be covering the counter in the thrift shop. If you wanted to look around for a bit, I can run and grab him for you. Maybe in a minute. It's been a long time since I've been in this part of the shop. She stepped forward and looped her arm with mine. And since this is the section I walked into, I think the shop wants us to get acquainted. Goosebumps raised instantly on the part of her arm that touched mine, which immediately brought up a twinge of nervous suspicion. Butch had insisted that I reverse my monkey paw wish, quite understandably of the opinion that fear was absolutely necessary to keep oneself from doing something idiotically reckless in an environment like Hal's. We worked on the wording of the wish for a ridiculously long time to restore my fear, allow me to function while afraid without crapping my pants, and to avoid any comically ironic twists. It seemed to work out pretty well, although I had noticed that the more scared I became, the more I would impulsively make sardonic comments. Butch didn't seem to notice that part, since it fit my personality like a glove. I led the distractingly beautiful woman through the dank maze of cages, allowing her to direct the duration spent admiring each of the animals. She had obviously been around the mythical block a few times, since she barely seemed impressed by some of the more commonplace residents like the chimeras and the Jersey devils. She hurried past the harpy cages, as the four of them immediately began to harmonize in a repetitive chant of whore. But she did fall instantly in love with the three-headed quackers. Brushing off my warnings, I had seen a few of the more mature ones let out small belches of fire. She released my arm and climbed directly into the pen with them, laying down and allowing them to curiously climb over her while she laughed delightedly. "Oh, I love these," she exclaimed. "What are they?" "They were just discovered a couple weeks ago. We decided to call them Chalamets." "Chalamets." "Yeah, because they're cute, but also kind of off-putting." She laughed again as one of them began to shimmy its body down the front of her blouse. I sternly told myself that it was ridiculous to be jealous of a rodent. The woman rose gracefully back to her feet. The Chalamet still nestled comfortably between her breasts. Two of its heads were sticking out of the top of her shirt, looking around gleefully. The third seemed to have fallen asleep against the swell of her cleavage. "Lucky jerk. I guess I've been chosen," she declared, climbing carefully out of the pen. "This little guy's coming home with me." "The pets pick the owners," I agreed. "We can get you checked out in the thrift shop if you still needed to talk to Butch. Ms. Babs." I was incredibly confused for a moment because the voice that spoke her name was not the dulcet music she had used before, but rather masculine and gruff and gravelly. Also, it seemed to be coming from behind me. Butch was standing next to the Kelpie stalls. His customary scowl had descended into a disgusted grimace. Babs gave him a smile that would have lit up a cemetery, but Butch didn't soften so much as a werewolf's hair. "I thought we agreed that it would be best if you stayed away from the shop," Butch said, his voice dangerous. "I thought that was more of a suggestion," Babs entreated. "I didn't think you had actually trespassed me. That suggestion was based off the assumption that you didn't want to see me any more than I wanted to see you." "Butch, come on, don't be like that. It's been, what, 50 years since the last time we saw each other? Think for a minute. Would I stay away that long only to show up now if it wasn't important? Why do you have a Chalamet between your tits?" Babs crossed her hands across her chest protectively. "Even someone like me needs an emotional support animal. Butch, get a harpy, then you'd have more in common." "I knew it was you who got them to call me that." I started laughing uncontrollably. Butch and Babs paused their fighting to stare at me. "Butch, you absolute rascal," I chortled. "You never told me you used to be married." It's not often that you get to witness an actual miracle, so I made sure to relish every second that I was able to see Butch blush. Babs suddenly became very occupied scratching a basilisk behind its ear. My shit-eating grin stayed on my face as I forced a big hug on Butch. "Man, she is way too hot for you." "What? Are you actually rich or something? Is this the part where I ask for a raise? Or hang on, was it a physical thing? Wait here, I'm gonna go get a ruler." Butch pulled away angrily. "Clear. Is there any way I can convince you to just not be yourself right now?" "Not a chance. DeMarco, you know I have a terminal case of not knowing when to shut up. So?" I sat down on the wheelbarrow full of dung and leaned back comfortably, my stomach growling at the smell. "How did you two meet?" "Also, Babs, does that mean you're single now?" The look Butch gave me was disgusted. I returned it with an impish grin. "You really have no concept of appropriate, do you?" "Clear. We work in a second-hand shop. This is kind of what we do." Butch sighed, and Babs tried unsuccessfully to suppress a smile. "I think I like this one." "Butch," she told him. "Yeah, you would. Maybe you should just tell me why you're here," Butch said to her. "I'm not sure if I have the energy to play around today." "Well, that sounds familiar." "Babs, come on!" Babs' grin flickered and fell. "Butch, Hal's been hiding out at my place for the last few months. He went missing yesterday." Butch's face didn't change, but he did fall silent. Babs seemed to be silently pleading with him to hear her out, and he was obviously considering it. Finally, he glanced over at me. "Clear. I think we need a couple minutes. The Becks just got in with a new shipment. Will you go sign them in and restock, please?" There were times to joke, and there were times to just leave people to their conversation. I had a hard time telling the difference sometimes, or most of the time. But I had learned that when Butch asked politely, it was probably for the best to just follow his lead. I nodded silently and made my way to the elevator at the back of the menagerie. In the elevator, I took a moment to consider the whole conversation I had just witnessed. Hal had been staying with Butch's ex-wife. That actually made a lot of sense. I knew Hal and Butch had been pretty famously tight. So the last place anyone would have expected Hal to go would be Butch's ex-wife. And what did that mean for Babs? Butch was one of the most formidable people I knew, but even he had spoken of Hal with a bit of awe. If Hal went to Babs for protection, God only knows what she must be capable of. Honestly, it probably meant she was exactly my type, i.e., a really bad idea. No, I wasn't really going to try to hook up with her, tempting though it may be, but she did strike me as someone who would play along with my attempts to get a rise out of Butch. I shook myself out of my thoughts and pressed the TC button on the panel. I felt the slowly becoming familiar lurch in my stomach. My hand instinctively reached out to brace myself against the wall as the tiny room began racing off to the left. That surprised the hell out of me the first time I'd ridden this thing. I had tried to figure out how any of it was possible at first, but pretty quickly decided I liked not having a migraine more. The elevator entered, its cruising speed, so I placed my hand on the other wall to prepare for the equally jarring deceleration. While I waited, my eyes scanned down the button panel again. There were 6 of them. Well, 9 if you count the door open, door close. We're all gonna die buttons. Besides the TC where I was going and the M from where I'd just been, there were also buttons for FD, our fine dining restaurant, Alec, our love hotel, and one actually managed to fit in Bosec, the blood orgy suite and event center. The final button was at the bottom, and it just said D. Butch hadn't told me what that one went to, just to never go down there unless Satan himself was on my tail. I had decided that it was prudent to take him at his word on that one. I felt my weight shift towards my bracing hand. I tried not to think about how far I had traveled in the last 3 minutes. I hadn't stepped outside from the menagerie exit yet, but I knew the restaurant opened just outside Brussels, and that trip only took about 1:30. The elevator ground to a halt, and the doors opened to the thrift store. No customers, fortunately. Butch had assured me that stealing from the place was impossible, but even in the supernatural realms, customers became pissy when they had to wait. The Becks were not customers, though, so they just had to put up with waiting. 4 of them stood next to the front counter, 3 boys and 1 girl. A pallet with several layers of boxes was floating about 6 inches off the ground next to them. As usual, their faces were identical and expressionless. Their blonde hair was cut in the same early Beatles bowl cut. Their eyes were the same deep black voids. "About time, asshole," the tallest of them grumbled. It always amused me that despite their appearance, they always sounded like middle-aged teamsters. "Deepest apologies, my tallest," I intoned mournfully while dipping into a florid bow. Standing back up, I slipped back into my normal speech. "Seriously, though, I'm really not. I was watching Butch meet up with the ex he hasn't seen in 50 years. Believe me, totally worth it." The tallest snorted. "Babs is back." "Huh? That poor guy. She's had centuries of experience manipulating men like him." "Hey, I'm still new here. This was the first I'd heard of her. You guys want to fill me in on some backstory?" The girl shook her head. "Not our business. Kid, we deal in inventory, not gossip. Union rules. Nothing wrong with a little idle conversation." "Munchkin!" "Call me that again and you'll lose a finger." "I believe you. Short stuff. Come on. I just want to know how large the pile of shit I'm standing in is." Another of the boys blew out a breath. "Look, we really don't pay much attention. She was here a lot. And then she wasn't. I know she worked for meth. So she spent most of her time down in the restaurant." I blinked in surprise. Didn't see that coming. Whatever. I'm pretty sure most of us have a past we're not so proud of. And working in the restaurant would make sense if she was on meth. The tallest spoke again. "Quit thinking like an idiot. Clear. METH. Monsters for the ethical treatment of humans. Babs used to make sure the people they served down in the restaurant were treated humanely, and that they didn't suffer unnecessarily during the slaughtering process." "Oh, nice. She struck me as the humanitarian sort. Any idea why they split? Butch's old assistant kept on jokingly flirting with her. So Butch killed him. Oh fuck. Really? No, not really. Now will you please sign the damn paperwork so we can get back to work? You mean those scriptwriters actually came up with rare... I grabbed the outstretched clipboard, signed my name at the bottom, and handed it back. The tallest tore off the receipt copy and handed it back to me. The four of them walked in lockstep out of the door as I turned to begin the unloading process. Curious as I was about what Butch and Babs were talking about, I had to admit that this was my favorite part of the job. The paperwork identified this as estate sale procurements, which meant a 50-50 chance of it being junk or awesome. The Becks were good at picking out items of significance, but a well-loved children's toy or a serial killer's trophy collection had a tendency to set off that same bell in their heads. I was met with disappointment for the first 8 boxes. Well, mostly. I did find myself spending an inordinate amount of time studying a fascinating painting of what appeared to be a Soviet-era army marching across an ocean with the silhouette of the Golden Gate Bridge barely visible in the background. A pod of fish painted with the Soviet flag swam about the advancing army's feet. I decided to hang it behind the cash register so I could study it more in depth later. There was definitely something to it since it took every ounce of concentration to pull my eyes off of it. I struck gold on the 9th box, where I found a translated copy of the Voynich manuscript, an unabridged version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, 12 missing books of Homer, one of which was titled "That Time Achilles and Odysseus Totally Boned," a strange red hat that smelled like sulfur-flavored ambergris and looked like it was perpetually coated with sand, and a small bow complete with arrow-filled quiver that all appeared to be plated in gold. Pulling out one of the arrows, I noticed that they seemed to be quite intentionally phallic. I quickly double-checked everything in the box off the inventory list the Becks gave me and set it aside for Butch set prices. I found a few other decent items scattered through the rest of the boxes, but I handled them myself due to us having very similar items already in stock. Mass-produced grimoires, a few tarot decks, a couple haunted toys, a number of enchanted pieces of clothing, things like that. At the bottom of the final box, since that's how these things always go for some reason, I found trouble the moment I picked up the forest green book with "Hi, Clear" written in Comic Sans on the front cover. I knew there was no way anything good could come of it, but, of course, I immediately said, "Hi, book. Nice to meet you," and opened it. The first line of the first page simply read, "Ha, you fucking idiot," and it began to glow red hot in my hands. I dropped it, since I had completely ignored the MOSHA requirements of protective equipment when handling untested magical artifacts. On the floor, the book flipped, its pages towards the center, and began to emit a bubble of green light. "Oh, God damn it," I yelled, and quickly ran behind the register to grab the canister of pure salt we kept under the counter for situations like this. I managed to get a circle drawn around the book just before the bubble burst, and a giant, hideous, praying mantis-looking thing flew directly at me. It hit the barrier with a dull thud, looked down at the circle of salt, and hissed audibly. I let out an audible breath as my heart pounded away in my chest. It twisted its arms and waved them in front of its face, immediately transforming into a woman with short red hair and piercing eyes. The wings stayed in place, though, flapping softly to keep her aloft and looking down in contempt at me. "Release me," she whispered fiercely at me. I stared back at her, wanting to think she was cute, but unable to get her insect form far enough out of my head to consider it. I know there is much we can learn from each other if we can negotiate a truce. We can find a way to coexist. Can there be a peace between us? Peace. No peace. Release me. Now. Man, Butch said you guys didn't have a sense of humor, but you just rolled with that one straight away. Rolled with what? Human. I said release me this instant. Wait, you mean those scriptwriters actually came up with realistic dialogue for that scene? Huh, who would have thunk it? She threw up her hands. Why must I always be caught by humans who make no sense? I think that might say more about you than me. Sweetie, The yellow door at the far end of the shop burst open, and a tall, lanky fellow covered in red-brown fur casually strolled in. "Jack," I yelled enthusiastically. So far as I knew, nobody had laid eyes on him since he disappeared through that door on my first day. Jack sauntered over to me and gave me a fist bump before clapping me on the shoulder with camaraderie. He glanced up at the fairy briefly, who bared a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth at him. He flipped her off in return. "Where you been? Butch told me you'd be okay." But I was starting to get a little worried. Jack reached into a pocket of fur and withdrew a small business card to hand over. In a small typeset, it simply said "the back rooms." I flipped it over to see a small description of the itsy-bitsy teeny-weeny multiversal in-betweeny. "Yep, that definitely clears it all up." He grinned at me. "Well, let me buy you a drink down in the restaurant before you head out tonight. I definitely owe you one." He nodded at me. Then he shot a questioning glance up at the fairy trapped in her circle of salt. "I have no idea. Butch told me how to trap her, but not what to do with her after. Any thoughts?" Jack shrugged and fired a finger gun at her. "That's a thought. It's iron rounds for fairies." "Right." Since I had absolutely no idea where Butch kept the iron bullets, it was probably for the best that he chose that moment to come through the elevator door. "What's all this then?" he asked, taking in the scene with a bewildered look. "Jack," yelled Babs from behind Butch with delight. She ran towards him and launched herself into his surprised embrace, burying her face into his fur. The Chalamet squeezed out from between them and scrambled up to the top of Jack's head, chittering in annoyance. Ever so slowly, I watched as Jack and Babs began to lose balance and tip backwards. It probably would have resulted in everyone sharing a good-natured laugh at their expense if they didn't fall directly onto the salt line. The fairy wasted no time flipping straight back into her praying mantis form and flying straight at me. I managed to duck underneath of her just before impact, but her back talons managed to swipe against my raised forearm, drawing a thin line of blood. She quickly made for the front door, but a quick shout of "Hey Siri!" set Faye protection wards from Butch blocked her exit with a cross of bright purple lines. She spun on us furiously, her face darting around the shop for another way out. Babs and Jack were pulling themselves back to their feet, but Butch was already in action, running through an aisle with his hands deftly swiping items off the shelves. "Clear. Get the salt ready," Butch shouted at me. Sensing that he was probably the largest threat in the room, the fairy went for Butch next. He slid to a stop at the end of the aisle and stood his ground. When she got close enough to him for Babs to let out a yell of concern, Butch reached into his pocket and threw a cloud of powder into her face. They must have been iron fillings or something, because she immediately shrieked and started trying to claw it out of her eyes. Butch moved in closer, an iron bar in his hand ready to finish her off, but one of her flailing wings caught him in the head and sent him sprawling. She shook her insectile face, and her reddened eyes fell on me standing in front of the cash register, holding the bag of salt. Jack and Babs came at her from either side, but a powerful flap of her wings sent them flying. I stared dumbly at her as she began to race straight at me, her face filled with rage. I looked around helplessly for anything within reach that might help me in this fight. The Chekhov gun was too far away. Nothing nearby was made with iron. Really, the only thing within reach that might work was... I grabbed the painting of the Soviet army walking on water and held it up between me and the charging Faye. The impact never came. I lowered the painting just enough for me to look over the top and saw her examining the painting while tapping her chin thoughtfully with her long, thin tarsi. "Interesting," she said. "Is this intended as a Cold War propaganda piece? If so, which side is it for? A warning for the West or an aspiration for the East?" "I'm not sure," I replied, calmly walking around the counter and pretending to contemplate the painting while surreptitiously beginning to reform the salt circle around her. I thought at first that it was just a depiction of some kind of Orwellian future, but now I'm starting to wonder if it's something way more insidious. "This might actually be an original Alexander Samokvalov," she said, fascinated. "I don't actually know. We just got it in." I haven't had a chance to get it officially appraised yet. If you're interested, though, we might be able to make a deal. I stepped back and sprinkled the last bit of salt in the bag onto the completed circle. With a quick motion, I reached over and pulled the painting away, breaking her line of sight. Dismay filled her eyes as she looked down to realize she was trapped again. "Fuck me," she groaned. "Sorry," I said, "really not interested when you're still in that skin. If you want to switch back to the redhead, though, we could talk about it." The fairy shot me a dirty look, but shifted back to her human form anyway. "If that is the cost of my freedom, I'll do what I must do." "Oh, no, I was kidding. Sorry. I have a lot of perversions, but formicophilia is not on the list." "How do you know what it is called, then?" "I really don't have a good answer to that. I Google random things when I'm bored." "Then name your desire. Human, and allow me to return to my realm." Butch, Babs, and Jack had joined me around the circle at this point, and the two former lovers were exchanging a pointed look. Weirdly enough. "Kid, your fuck-up might have some unexpected benefits here. Babs and I were just coming to talk to you about it. Actually, we need to track down Hal. This shop is in some serious trouble if the Hellspawn managed to get a hold of him. He was safe over with Babs, but now that he's vanished again, we really need to do something about this." He looked over at the trapped fairy. "How about that? Can you bring Hal to us?" "You did not trap me. Shopkeeper, my deal is not with you." Butch looked at me. "All you, kid. Think you're ready to go solo?" I smiled at him. I was born ready. It was pretty satisfying that I even got Jack to let out an exasperated groan with that one. "All right, babe. What do you think? Can you bring Hal back to us?" The fairy's eyes went distant. "No. He has been shielded against interference by fairy magic. I don't know how, but I cannot touch him." "Well, shit. How about information? Can you tell us anything about him?" She nodded. 3 questions, 3 true answers, and you will give me my freedom." "Fine, but no bullshit answers." "Okay. No technically true, but only because homonyms exist. Answers, and nothing so cryptic that it only makes sense after we're done." "You got me." "Also, once you give us the answers and I break the circle, you can't hurt any of us for trapping you." "Agreed. I will speak only the full truth, and we shall all depart unharmed." "All right. Where is Hal? What is the quickest way for us to get to him? And what will we need to do in order to successfully find him and bring him back?" She closed her eyes briefly, as if scanning her hard drive. "He is currently hiding in Purgatory. The blue door at the back of the shop will bring you to the realm. But then you take the subway to Terrace 5 and catch the bus to the historical district. Once there, you must have with you a servant of heaven, a denizen of hell, and a man perpetually trapped in the mortal realm. Between the 4 of you, you will be able to track down a social media influencer who goes by the name of Razamataz, who will guide you to Hal. I cannot tell whether you will succeed in convincing him to return. The uncertainty that surrounds him is too deep to see clearly, but all other paths lead to certain failure. Bear in mind, these instructions are intended for you alone, if these others decide to leave you behind. These answers may no longer be truthful." "All right, that'll have to do. Thank you." "Gorgeous." And I broke the salt circle with my foot. The fairy immediately vanished with a crack of lightning. The 4 of us looked at each other for a moment. "That was uncharacteristically straightforward for you." "Clear," Butch said, sounding slightly impressed. That whole screwing up the 3 questions trope has been done to death. I didn't think there was anything more I could add to it. So what's the point?" "Well, strangely enough, we have most of our group already here," Babs commented. "All we need is a servant of heaven." "Wait, really?" I said, surprised. "Is Jack from hell?" "No, I am," Babs replied. "My place is located in one of hell's suburbs, and the man trapped in the mortal realm." Butch held to his hand. "Right here. I will be answering no follow-up questions." He looked over at Jack. "Hey, buddy. Glad you made it back okay. Any chance you'd be willing to keep an eye on the shop for a few days while we go drag the owner back? Jack raised his hand and rubbed his thumb and forefinger together. Of course, I'll give you double what I'm paying Clear. Wait, what the fuck? I yelped. Shut up. Clear, you're still in training. Is that cool? Jack. Jack gave him a thumbs up. Great, so all we need to do now is track down a servant of heaven and we can get started. Right on cue. The front door opened and a fat, middle-aged guy walked in, naked except for a drooping sash. He had a toothpick sticking out from his teeth and a tiny pair of soft white wings sticking out from his shoulder blades. Hey dudes, he said with a lecherous smile on his face. I just talked to a bunch of creepy kids who said you all might have my bow. A wide grin spread across my face. I think we might have what you're looking for, but technically speaking it's our bow now. His face began to turn angry, but I held up a calming hand. Let's not get off on the wrong foot. Here, I'm sure we can make a deal. I'm Clear. By the way, it's good to meet you. He accepted my outstretched hand. You too, I suppose. I'm X-Mac. My grin grew 3 sizes that day. Of course you are. Hey, anyone else hungry? I'm fucking starving. Let's hit the restaurant before we get started. I've always been blind, and that's fine by me. I'm glad I never got to see and then lose my sight. That would have been too depressing. Instead, I don't get to mourn something I've never had. I've lived in this Upper East Side flat for a really, really long time. As a writer, it's important for me to have my own space. I've been told my writing style is exquisite because I cannot see. I focus on the other senses and my writing shines by stimulating them. I don't say a red apple. Red has no meaning for me. I say warm, firm and sour, a bit sweet, fits in your hand, smells of grass and childhood. I'm not gonna lie, this flat was nice for a while, but really tiny, and I want to learn to play the piano. So, naturally, since I've saved up a lot of money from my works, I bought this beautiful mansion in the suburbs. At least, that's how my friends and family called it. I don't care, I can't see anyway. I just needed to feel the warm sunlight in the kitchen and the crisp air from my balcony, while I drink my coffee in the morning and listen to the birds, and I work, day and night. People thought it would be a problem if my house had an upper floor, because, according to them, even if I've lived my whole life blind, I cook, chop up things, take baths and clean the house. I apparently can't climb some damn stairs. No problem for me. I counted the steps of my staircase, 14. Eventually, I got used to it, and I even stared going up and down the stairs faster, since I knew exactly how many steps I needed to climb. That's the thing when you're blind. Some movements become reflexes. Since you live alone, you learn how to position certain things and you always find them in the same place. One day, however, I was going down the stairs and I tripped where I expected the floor to be. There was this additional step, and I didn't think much of it. Figured I must have not paid attention. I mean, yes, it was odd, because after 30 years of being blind, tripping wasn't really a common thing, but I didn't look much into it. However, when I went up again, I tripped at the top. That was definitely unusual, sure as it was. 1 extra step. I went back the stairs and counted. 15. Counted again. 14. The fuck? Sure enough, 14 steps. Whatever. I went to sleep. A few days passed and I didn't trip anymore. I played it off as some error my tired mind made. Then, one night, as I went downstairs to get a glass of water, I tripped again. This time, I really fell down on my foot. That was not a skipped step. There were at least 2 additional steps. I felt around and stood up. My foot hurt a lot, but the ankle was good. I couldn't really stand up on it, but no serious damage. I went up, carefully, counting. 16. What the fuck? Sure, you mess up. You count 1 more or 1 less, but 2 more. The house was so still, so silent. No birds, no bees, no cars passing. Normal people fear the darkness. I fear the silence. I went down the stairs again, counting. By the time I reached the bottom, I counted 14 again. I went up again, 18. That was absolutely ridiculous. Was someone messing with me? How could they even mess with me like that? I've never heard of a burglar to break into someone's house and add steps to their stairs. Still, I went to check to see if I locked the door. I can make my way around pretty neat. Went through the kitchen, then into the hallway. And then I bumped into something. I flouncy. My organs tensed up. My hair stood up. All ears. I had never felt so much fear in my life. Decided to go on and check the door. Yeah, locked. I made my way back upstairs, and this time I didn't bump into anything, or anyone. 18. For fuck's sake. All night. All I did was go up and down, like a lunatic. Each time I got different results. Back upstairs, I decided to go down and make one final count. 14. Okay, it is probably going to be more. 15. Nope. Still going. 17. 19. 21. That's a record. 27. 33. That could not be possible. 52. 88. I could absolutely feel this sense of impending doom. Something was there with me, and it was vile, disgusting, and unnatural. And this staircase was never ending. 102. I finally gave up. Whatever this was, I didn't want to reach the bottom. I went back up. The moment I turned my back to go up, I tried to be brave, but something got over me and I ran on all fours. Desperate to reach the top. Desperate to run. Run back to my bedroom. I don't remember how I got inside and locked my door, but I did. And now I'm sitting here and typing. This house is strange. It is eerie and disturbing. And I think if I'd gotten to the bottom of the staircase, I would have left this world. I don't think that was my house anymore. However, no matter what stupid, cryptic, eerie, unnatural staircase I unveiled, it is important not only that I don't go down there, but that nothing comes up, either. And, right now, I can hear it creaking. As I typed out the first post, actually, dictated it, I would stop from time to time to listen. The creaking was not consistent and almost imperceptible. A normal person couldn't probably hear it, but my remaining four senses were overly sharpened. I guess what scared me most was the silence in between. I'd speak to dictate, I'd hear the creaking, I'd stop. The creaking would stop too. It was almost as if it was mocking me. I didn't want to think of the thing I'd bumped into. Felt like bumping into a coat rack or something. But I didn't stop to feel around. I have a consistent urge to flee any dangerous situation I'm in, because I know I can't fight it. Even if I were fast, even if I was strong, I can't fight something I don't fully understand. They could be standing right in front of me, and if they were still enough, I wouldn't know. As I finished writing, I reached for my phone. I figured I'd call my sister. I was starting to feel the warmth of the morning light on my shoulders through the windows, and hear some birds. Judging on how stiff I felt, I must have been up all night. The creaking had stopped. Had it made its way up to my door? Was it standing on the other side? "Hey Siri," called Daphne. My voice sounded so hoarse. Usually, I talk to myself a lot. I sing. Whatever. I play music. This time, I'd been so quiet, so afraid to make a sound, so afraid to breathe. The phone was ringing. "Hi there. You good? It's kinda early." "What time is it?" "Like 6 a.m. "Damn. I'm sorry. Everything okay?" I stopped. Slowly, I crept up to the door and placed my ear on the oak wood to listen. I could feel someone's presence outside, waiting. I think someone broke into my house, and they're being very discreet about it. I've started noticing things, unusual stuff. I trip when I shouldn't, and last night I bumped into something like a coat rack. "What? Are you sure? Yes. And the staircase kept creaking. Right now, I've locked myself into the bedroom, but I think it's waiting on the other side of the door. Fuck. That's so creepy. I have to be at the office at 9, but I'll phone in if I'm late. I'll come check it out. Thanks. Do you have a key? Silence. Daff, do you have a key? No. Why? Didn't I give you one? You did, but I didn't take it. I felt weird having a key to your house. For fuck's sake. Whatever. Just come. I'll fucking go downstairs again and let you in. Okay, stay safe. Yeah, whatever. I hung up and Saturday on the floor, back against the door, waiting, listening. Nothing was going on. Did I scare it off? She texted me she had 10 more minutes until she got to my place. Okay, fuck. Finally, I stood up and unlocked the door. I stood there in silence for a while. My options were very limited. Normal people could literally look around and make out if they were alone or not. I couldn't. All I could do was listen, and if whatever was there was being really still, really silent, my worst option was to feel around. That terrified me. I've talked to others, and something similar for them was sticking their hand out in complete darkness. The thought of touching that thing made my skin crawl. That direct contact was so unbearable and so much more dangerous, but I had no choice. Because everything was silent, so I stuck my hands out. My heart raced with every step. I wanted to keep going, but at the same time, I wanted so badly to stop and turn around, made my way to the stairs. 14 steps, back to normal. I was barefoot, and the hardwood floors felt so cold, so unusual against my skin. I thought that bothered me, until I stepped into something sticky. Ew, fuck. What the fuck? I gagged and wiped my foot on the carpet. I was going to ask Daphne what that was. Made it to the door without any other occurrences. I unlocked it and was greeted by the familiar voice of my sister. Hi. Oh God. I'm so sorry you have to go through this. I'm ready to call 911. Dialed up and everything. I'll take a look. I wanted Ryan to come too, but you know how it is with him and work. I felt her warm hands around mine, and her sweet perfume. Thank you. It's such a comfort to have you here. Yeah, no problem. Please take a look. Tell me if you notice anything unusual. And, I stepped into something sticky in the living room. Please tell me what it was. Okay, I will. Let's see. I heard her pace the room carefully, without saying a word. Silence. So, what is it? Anything weird? Silence. Why wasn't she speaking? It's nothing alarming. It's just odd. What did I step on? First of all, that is jam. Jam? Yeah, jam. Are you sure? Yep. There's a jar on your counter. Opened. Maybe you forgot about it. No. I did not fucking eat jam. What? Well, it's nothing. But things are a bit out of order. How? You're usually pretty neat. Right now, it's a bit of a mess, but weird. You've got a pan on the floor, and this painting propped up on your dinner table, taken from the wall. A pile of clothes spread around, almost in a pattern. What the fuck? Go upstairs and check. 2. I could tell she didn't want to, based on her hesitation. Eventually, I heard her climb the stairs and walk around a bit. So, anything, please speak. There's nothing weird upstairs, and no one, anywhere. It's pretty neat. That bothered me for some reason. How neat? Well, the usual. Bed made. Things in order. My bed is made. Yeah. I didn't make it. I was literally sleeping in it. Then I woke up to get a glass of water. Then the weird shit happened, and I locked myself in the bedroom. Didn't stop to make my fucking bed. I mean, it's not perfectly made. like a child tried to. You said no one was there. No one. Call the police. I heard her getting downstairs. Look, I can't. Why not? Someone was definitely fucking around in my house. And tell them what? That someone made your bed, placed your pan on the floor. No signs of forced entry. You didn't get hurt. I bumped into something. In the middle of the night. In the dark. How unusual. Okay, well, someone was definitely there. Look, there's not much I can do. I've checked everything. You're pretty safe. You have no attic, no basement, no back door, windows locked, door locked. You're good. I'll help you clean up and I'll get going. If there's anything weird, call me. Okay, I had to ask her, even though she was going to think I'm crazy. How many steps does my staircase have? What? Count them for me. 14, as usual. Okay. I definitely felt I had flipped a switch with that question, because after that question, the way she talked to me changed. She was overly patient, overly calm, kept telling me to put on some music, distress, take a bath, listen to one of my audiobooks and don't panic. I felt an ounce of heartbreak to think my sister didn't believe me, but I moved on. After that, a few days passed when I kept staying alert, but nothing happened. No weird stuff. Everything had gone back to normal. Christmas came and I hosted, had friends and family over, and forgot about how lonely and desolate I'd felt in that house. Maybe I'd just had an episode of, wandering. Maybe my mind had just been somewhere else. When you live with a disability, sometimes it's hard to stay on track. So what if my mental health had taken a hit? I was aware of it and decided to see a therapist. Months passed and nothing happened. I was happy my new book had been published and I hadn't felt scared or watched in ages. Things were good. One night, I was on the couch, drinking some wine and watching The Bachelor. Well, not exactly watching, but listening. You know what I mean. It's still entertaining. The AC was on and blasting waves of warmth around the house, and I was starting to feel sleepy. I reached out my leg out of the blanket and touched the floor. The cold floor. Reached my hand out and felt the couch. Cold, too. This coldness was everywhere. How could it be? I'd had the AC on for the whole evening. Why was it so cold? I reached for the remote and turned the AC up. It wasn't working. Stupid fucking air conditioner. I'm gonna turn it off and on. Modern problems require modern solutions. I told you I talk to myself a lot. So I pressed the big button. The AC beeped. The beep was wrong. It should have been lower. It's higher when it turns on. Was it off this whole time? Couldn't be. I had literally felt its warm breeze on the back of my neck. I stood there in silence, trying to process. It was as if I was just stalling, delaying the moment of realization, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to admit someone or something had been breathing on my neck. It was probably still there, but the breeze had stopped. I turned the TV off. I needed absolute silence to focus. I stood there for what felt like hours, listening. The floors didn't creak, but I could almost make out the carpet being pressed. Steps. Normal people wouldn't have noticed, but I did. The steps were irregular. The pattern was weird. The pacing uncoordinated. I heard when it left the carpet. Then a thump indicated it was right next to me. The couch shifted. I was over it. People hallucinate. I stuck my hand to the side, ready to feel whatever the fuck was there. I didn't get the chance. Suddenly, the couch shifted back up and I heard a whoosh. The thing had seen me try to reach it and moved. It didn't want me to touch it. Then, I heard a click. My TV turned back on. Whatever it was telling me to ignore it. Why? I was not going to sit around and watch TV with that next to me. I was going upstairs. After I counted the 14 steps, for some reason, I knew the 15th would be there. Went back down, 17. Went back up, 19. Back down. I was 20 extra steps in and counting. When I realized it was not going to end, stairs were tweaking again. Turned around, went back up, into the bedroom, door locked. The TV was still running downstairs. After a while, I heard it turn off. Others would have been terrified. I was relieved. That meant the thing was downstairs and not here, with me. I've decided to install some cameras around, to be safe. If anything peculiar happened, I wanted to have a friend check them out. Or, at least, tell me I was being crazy. I set them up the next day, after the incident I posted earlier. After that, I kept minding my own business. I was terrified, and I know what you guys would say. Why would you still stay there? Why were you so calm? Well, there was this odd feeling I had. Something was definitely off. But somehow I was able to go through that and be okay. Almost as if you're walking on a tight rope, and you know that it is dangerous, but you don't want to hesitate or stop, or even slow down, because you somehow feel that the less you think about it and go on, the safer you are from falling. Although, in my case, I didn't exactly know what my fate would be. It was Thursday. I had just come home from my job. I also teach creative writing at a university. It is important that I write down my routine that day. I unlocked the door, got inside, locked it back, took my coat off and hung it up, took my shoes off, put my keys on a table, went upstairs, changed, washed my hands, came back down to cook dinner, chopped, stirred, turned the oven on, set the table, worked my way around the stove, Saturday down and ate my dinner, washed the dishes, so on, then went upstairs, bathroom, sent some texts, went back downstairs and turned on the TV. After a while, I began dozing off. I could not keep up with whatever fight was going on the show, and my mind began lazily sweeping away, until a dream made its way in, mixed with reality. I fell asleep. I awoke, and was greeted by silence. No eerie sounds, no movement. Silence. Weird. Hadn't I left the TV on? Oh, okay. I reached my hand out for the remote, which wasn't in the usual spot. The whole room was silent, so the thing was either very still, or it had left. I needed to call my friend and ask them to come over, so that I could have them check the cameras. The house remained silent for a while, until I heard his car in the driveway. Good. I let him in and asked him if he'd noticed anything unusual around. Not really. Opened up my laptop and had him access the footage. Okay, let's see. So we're looking into today. Right. Yeah. I'll just download the last 12 hours. That should be enough. Or the last 6. Just do 12. Fine. I heard the keyboard clacking for a bit. Then we waited until he said, "There it is." Fast forward. Nothing unusual. House empty. Here you are, coming home from work. You're taking your coat off. Shoes. Keys. Went upstairs. Nothing there. Fast forward. Here you are again. Back down. Opened the fridge. He fell silent for a while. At first, I figured he wasn't seeing anything, so he got tired of narrating what I was doing. I even thought the thing might not even show on camera. I didn't need another person to think I was crazy. But then, the silence had gone on for too long. So, what do you see? Are you fucking with me or what? What? I heard him sigh. Look, I'm really not in the mood.
So please tell me if you're fucking with me.
What did you see? Let's just go to my car. I'll take your laptop with us, and phone, and keys, and I'll download some more footage, and you're spending the night with me. Why? My stomach dropped. I'll tell you. I will. Let's just go. His voice was shaking a bit, and I knew he was trying to be calm, but his movements were too rushed, too unhinged. He was freaking out. I put my coat on, took my wallet and keys, and we left. We got inside the car, but he immediately turned the engine on and hit the gas, without saying a word. What did you see? Just tell me. Stop freaking me out. I'm really sorry for you and what you had to go through. That is some paranormal activity shit. What did you see? Okay, he cleared his voice. So, you'd opened the fridge, took out some stuff, then started preparing dinner. I saw some movement upstairs, like in the corner of the screen. Then, this. Fuck. I don't know. I don't know how to explain. It was a thing. It was so fucking creepy. Looked like you a bit, but not really, 'cause it had longer arms and legs and a very bony face, wearing some clothes. I assume yours. So was it human? No, I don't think so. Its arms bent so weirdly and it was taller than you. And it walked. Fuck. What the fuck? It walked so strange, and acted so strange, and it had this hair, thin and falling off, and the face. Face? Yeah, its eyes were really big. That was without a doubt the scariest shit I've ever seen, and fixated on you the whole time. What was it doing? This is gonna sound crazy, but I think it was mimicking you. It literally watched you non-stop. And the shit that freaks me out the most is that it was in front of you the whole time, while you cut the vegetables, while you ate, while you were watching TV, studying you, poorly mimicking what you were doing, then you fell asleep. Yeah? It watched you the whole time, took its bony finger and, at some point, pressed the off button on the remote. Its face literally sat like 2 inches from yours for a while. It just stared, until you woke up, then walked. I don't know if I can call it walked, upstairs. After he finished talking, we sat in silence for a while. I didn't know what to say. He parked his car and we went up to his apartment, then sat down to download the rest of the footage. For fuck's sake, Will, I swear to God, it's been watching you non-stop. Like, I've downloaded the footage since the cameras were set up, so that's 2 months ago, and it's here, all the time. Sometimes it climbs up to the corner of your wall, on the ceiling, and watches. Other times it shadows you. I felt sick all this time, when I thought I was alone. And that isn't even the weirdest thing. 2 months ago, it didn't have hair. I think the hair is not its own. What? I think it got it from somewhere. I think it's picking at your hair while you sleep. It's trying to become human, to become you. I was about to throw up. Even in the movements, when you're not there, it takes your things, tries them out. It looks fucking terrifying. It is literally learning, studying you. I knew, for some reason, and I didn't even need proof. I just knew it had come from the stairs, climbed up from whatever portal had been there, and I knew it was trying to lure me down there, so it could take my place, so it could become me. I explained everything to my friend. There was nothing I could do, except get the fuck out. I didn't know how to close the portal, and I needed my friend's help if I wanted to try. I was trying to evaluate my risks, my options, when my friend said something that made my blood run cold. Look, if you don't go through that portal stuff, it will probably just kill you and take your place. I think the next time you return home, it will have figured that out. My sister knew now that I wasn't crazy anymore. Everyone had seen the footage. It's become some sort of news around my family. Friends. They were all dying to watch it. Some morbid curiosity making them want to see what traumatized me for the past months. I was grateful they saw it too. But at the same time, I had to move out and sell the house, and that was a bummer. I was struggling financially, and I knew I couldn't just buy another house. I had to sell this one first, and that obviously meant I had to go back there and get my things. I was not planning to go alone, though. It took a while to try to convince my friend to come with me. He was really scared, but I had to get my stuff out, and that meant spending a few more nights there. So, last month, me and my friend went back to the house. As soon as we entered, he let out a sigh. I asked what was wrong, and he just replied with, "It's been making some changes around here." What changes? Well, it took food out of your fridge. Your clothes are torn, I think it even slept in your bed. It's not gonna like you being back. I'm gonna assure that thing that I'm not staying. I'll leave soon enough, and it'll be free to torment whoever comes here next. Right. So, we started packing and cleaning. It was a bit harder for me, and we called for backup. My other friend, Jessica, she refused to come without her boyfriend. Now, the four of us versus that thing meant it would be too scared to do anything. I didn't know much about it, but from its behavior I learned it mainly focused on me, and when its transformation would be complete, it would try to take over my life and send me to the other place, down the stairs. We'd worked on it for a few days, and what we'd left was just some furniture to be moved. I was extremely grateful for my friend's support who, unlike my sister, believed me from the beginning. We'd had so little due to left, just some furniture. As I said, so little, and I hadn't expected it to end like this. It was me, my friend, the one who saw the footage first. We'll call him Adam, and my sister Lisa. They were downstairs, wrapping up the TV, and I was upstairs, lifting up the mattress. I could hear their voices downstairs. Yeah, like that. Wait, no. Hold it, hold it, hold it. You're literally not holding it. It's so heavy. Okay, now help me up with the wrapper. Yeah. You dropped it on my foot. Please just be careful. Bring me the scissors. I'm thinking I'll just cut this tape up, like this. I'd mostly asked them to speak more, just so I wouldn't listen to the silence. Silence, for me, meant danger. After a while, they stopped talking. I could only hear the sound of footsteps and things being dragged around. Lisa, Adam. No answer. Guys. My heart dropped. I made my way downstairs. I'd subconsciously counted the steps. 16. Whatever. Lisa. Adam. No answer. Feeling around. The house was empty. No one was in the living room. No one was in the kitchen. Just boxes and clothes. I Saturday on the couch, listening, hoping to hear some footsteps. But I was only greeted by silence, so heavy, almost a being of its own. I had the urge to leave, made my way to the front door, but just as I was about to turn the doorknob, this feeling stopped me. I turned around and pressed my back on the door, feeling the phone in my pocket. Hey Siri, call Lisa. She picked up. Yeah, Will, is that you? Yes. Where are you? Where are you? Lisa, where's Adam? Why would you leave like this? You know you shouldn't leave me here alone. What do you mean? Where are you? In the living room. Her voice was shaking. Will, where are you? In the goddamn living room. There's no one here. I don't understand. You came down the stairs and you're now sitting on the couch looking at me. Who is this? Who is calling me from your phone? It's me, Lisa. It's me. I'm telling you, I'm in the living room. Then who is sitting on the couch, if it's not you? The moment of realization hit both of us gradually. I knew who was on the couch, or what was on the couch, and I knew that wherever I was, that wasn't my house anymore. I had finally managed to go down to the other place, and the thing had come back up, but this time, with a more efficient disguise. Listen to me, Lisa, that is not me. I need you to leave the house. Take Adam with you. Please, just get out. Suddenly, she said something that shocked me. How do I know? How do you know what? That it's not you, on the couch. Is the thing just sort of staring at you? Yeah. Well, move around a bit. It knows I'm blind, so it will pretend it is blind too. If you do something unexpected and it follows you with its eyes, you'll know. Okay. I didn't hear much next. Just movement. Then I heard her say, "Oh my God, it's true. What do I do now?" Will, I'm scared. I don't think it'll hurt you. Just don't let it know you know it's not me. Okay. I'll just go back upstairs and hope I can somehow make it out. Do you think it understands what we're saying? I don't know. Because if it does, then it also knows it knows. I felt helpless, and for the first time in my life, I wished I could see so badly. I just wanted to get out of whatever this place was, back to my real house. But I could not find the staircase. I was stuck. What if I wasn't going to make it out of this place? Please stay on the phone with me. Okay. Adam, come here. No. What? He talked to the thing. He thought it was you. And what is going on? Adam, here. Take the phone. I heard Adam's voice. Yeah? Adam, listen. This is me. This is Will. And I'm stuck in this place. That up there is not me. Please don't talk to it. Don't let it know you know it's a copy. What? Will, is that you? Are you serious? Shut up. Shut up. Whoa, buddy. Don't touch me. Stay there. Freak. I need to call the police. Don't call the police. If it knows you don't believe it's illusion, I don't know what it will do. Lisa, take this. I'm calling the police. I'm tired of this shit. I heard some muffled voices and then Lisa, again. Maybe it's good that he's calling the police. Right. Maybe the thing doesn't understand we know it's not real. She stopped. Don't act scared of it. Lisa, I caught normal. I'm trying, but it just stood up now. Please, I don't know what it can do. It's walking towards me. I'm just scared. Oh, what the fuck? What? I listened as her voice changed from confusion to disgust, to fear, to terror. What? Lisa? Adam? I couldn't make out what she was saying. At some point, I thought I heard Adam. I was still desperate to feel around for that fucking staircase. I heard a thud, meaning she'd dropped the phone, and some screams, then muffled crying, and some sounds I could not make out. At this point, my whole body was tensed up, and my heart was beating so hard I was about to faint. The more noises I heard, the more I was convinced something sinister had happened, and as much as I'd tried to deny it, I knew. I had no choice but to listen to this scene through the phone, unable to help. And even if I'd been able to get out of this place, I couldn't see anything either. At some point, after I'd screamed my lungs out, my face drenched in sweat and tears, the noise stopped, and this silence remained. This fucking silence. I hate silence. I kept wailing, hoping someone would respond. It could have been hours until I got a response, but not the one I hoped I would get. I heard some harsh movement, and then this hoarse, rotten voice. That wasn't even a voice, but something like an animal trying to mimic a human. I think I'll just slip in. For some, it would have been comical, but I knew that was just one of the phrases I used to say. It had just mimicking me again. Bring me the sauce. I think I will cue at this tarpe P. I listened, petrified. Meanwhile, my foot hit something. Stairs. Was it letting me go? I climbed up the stairs and found myself in my hallway. I could feel the familiar carpet under my feet. I went downstairs and sensed this smell that I couldn't identify. The floor was slippery. Lisa. Adam. I heard something run up the stairs, and just like that I knew the thing had left. For now, but my mind wasn't on the creature, but on Adam and Lisa. Guys. Walking around, in the slippery floor, my foot hit something. It felt like hair. Nothing in the world could describe how I felt in that moment. There is nothing I can type down here which will help you visualize, because not everything feels like something else. There is no analogy I can make. When you discover a crime scene, you usually see it first. I hadn't. I'd just been walking around their bodies clueless for a good few minutes. You know how it feels to not know something is blood until you slip on it. To have to see if someone is alive by desperately feeling around her to find their hand, neck, pulse. To just crawl around, in their blood, running your hands through the mess, trying desperately to see any signs of life, calling out their name. I heard the door open, and I realized the police had come. Adam had probably called them, and they had finally managed to make an appearance. They found me, obviously, covered in their blood, next to them. I didn't even know what the creature had actually done to them, no matter how hard I tried. They would not listen to me. They thought I was crazy. The next following days were a blur. Luckily, I had the footage of the thing from the past months, and the testimony of my remaining friends and family, plus Adam's call that clearly said, "Something is pretending to be my friend, and it may hurt us." They had downloaded the footage of the actual murder, but they refused to describe it to me. They just asked me to rest. But I can't, because no matter what, I want revenge. I am determined to find out the story of this thing, the story of this house, and its weird fucking portal staircase. And I want to kill this fucking creature, even if it is the last thing I do. For now, this is my final update. I might post more on my account, depending on what I come across. For now, I need rest. I have begun seeing a therapist, and I'm recovering. I still get nightmares. I wonder what I could have done better. But the truth is, I think I was doomed from the beginning. From the moment I'd counted one extra step on my staircase, the nightmare had begun. Many years ago, on this very day, I would have been hunched over my desk. There was Kleenex by my side, as I typed away, red-nosed, and as the last of my co-workers trickled out for the night. That season, all the department was abuzz, working on pieces related to the nearing election, though I was stuck writing its scraps. A pile of my rejected articles was stacked to my side, headlines illuminated by the desk lamp. District Rep. Martin donates generous sum to local church. Baby names Christopher and Martin trending after District Representative Christopher Martin. It was obvious which candidate was popular with the townsfolk. Blonde-haired, church-going Christopher Martin with his heavy golden watch, 5 years my junior and a rising star. He graduated at the top of his class, worked from the bottom with not a scandal nor crime on his record. Now there was a man who had it all. As my thoughts drifted, a great gust of wind rattled the window, snapping me alert. The morning outside was dark, and the streets were darker, with the snow taking a bluish hue, and not a streetlight in sight. But just as I was about to look away, from the edge of my eye, I spotted a flash of gold. A figure, watch flashing on his wrist, with blonde hair poking out from under his hat, strode across the street with barely contained haste. Immediately, I got up. I grabbed my camera, my pad and pencil, and dashed down the wooden staircase. Hardly able to stop myself from tripping, I fumbled with the combination lock on the main floor doors and slid across the marble reception floor. However, by the time I pushed open the ground floor doors, Christopher Martin had disappeared into the night. There was only the sleeping city on which the snow fell softly, down, down, until the ground, where a set of fresh footprints were imprinted on the snow. Following the footprints down the road, I again gave chase, and was led into an alley with a terrible draft that tore straight through my bare clothes. I hugged myself tight to protect any remaining warmth, the frigid air whipping around me. Then another draft came in the opposite direction like a push, sending me deeper into the narrow passage. So I continued, turning from corner to corner in a labyrinth of alleys, passing a flickering lamplight, then a row of ransacked trash, then a series of houses with boarded-up windows, until the path I pursued forked, and the footprints did not continue on either side. In front, there loomed a dark, dilapidated building with walls so covered with grime their original color was obscured, and a burgundy door whose paint job was peeling off like skin, left ever so slightly ajar, creaking back and forth with the wind. Behind the door, one could just barely glimpse a steep flight of stairs leading straight downwards, despite the 3 stories atop the building seemed to carry. Click. With my hands red from the cold, I took a picture of the door. Click, click, then 2 of my surroundings. Then was my chance to scamper away without having disturbed a thing, as quiet as a mouse, back to my company floor where all was warm and safe. I imagined reporting this newfound scoop to the office, submitting these photos, and watching all the glory be snatched by whoever the office deemed more worthy. A younger, more talented man. I would never be able to forgive myself if that happened. No matter the warnings, my instincts screamed at me, shivering in front of the yawn of that building. I slipped through the weathered door, stepping down the first step, where the old wood groaned. Its sound was just barely hidden by the howling winds outside. So I crouched down low and descended the stairs, 3 at a time. The chill slowly began to dissipate, but was immediately replaced by uncomfortable heat once I reached the bottom. In the space lingered the feel of an abandoned factory, parching, dusty air, backdropped with the hum of enginery from all directions, and not a window in sight. Gingerly, I stepped forward, but my shoe scraped loudly against something. Paper, by its sound. I picked it up, but could barely make out its soaked then dried writing. So many kilograms of salt, and blood jasper, specified to be red and green, smooth and shining. Then some other details, I decided, that could be deciphered in the comfort of my cubicle. Wrapping my camera in the hem of my sweater, I muffled its shutter. Click. I continued to navigate the dark by touch alone, sidestepping rusted machinery and weaving through stacks of cobwebbed crates, snapping odd photos of stray documents and syringes underfoot. Despite the heat and the dark, the corners of my mouth lifted. There was a thrill to this dangerous adventure. Then my hand brushed a plank the size of a door. Leaning straight against the wall, a dim light radiated from behind it, casting shadows onto the floor. Click. First, a picture where the plank was closed. Then, I inched the plank open, just slightly enough, and peered through the narrow opening. I thank you for the opportunities and successes you have helped me achieve. Martin's voice echoed across the room steadily, his forehead illuminated with sweat. He stood stiff as a pole, with his head bowed, but my conscience is burdened. I readied my pad and paper to record Martin's lines. There was a stronger heat emanating from the gap to the room, drying my eyes as fast as I could blink. A bead of sweat trickled down my face. When a deep, viscous voice rumbled, "Hath thy conscience been of consideration?" It shook the walls and hammered my pencil against the pad, reducing my writing to a chaotic scrawl. Its hiss was neither of man nor woman, nothing like I had ever heard. Not growing one just as thy deal nears its end, I trust. I have a family now, one I very much adore. Aye, a quite quaint family, and a load of wage, with a grand reputation I've granted ye. The voice came closer now, and Martin took a step back. Even outside the room, I could feel the atmosphere thicken. Then take them away, Martin shouted suddenly, before he tripped on his own feet and landed square on his ass. The money and the fame, and go away with them. In response, a searing gust burst out of the gap, sending me reeling with a hand over my eye and my tools clattering to the floor. "Insolence," the voice boomed. I flinched. The sheer power of it shook the ceiling. "Thou hast bound thyself with thy own greed," the voice hissed with quiet threat. "In 3 weeks' notice, just as promised, I shall cometh for thee." However, Christopher Martin seemed not to listen. He was fumbling around his breast pocket, clumsy fingers desperately grasping for something. "Wrong," he finally interjected. He held out a small vial of water like a shield, its contents reflecting what little light the room offered. "I've told my church about you, and I've confessed my sins." He came to his feet. "You have no more power over me." With a flourish, he raised the vial defiantly. "Our deal is off." His eyes stared straight ahead, silently goading. Then, "Come hither," the demon commanded. "I command the scribe." Behind the plank, my breath caught. I considered running. Whoever Martin conversed with was not of this world, but of the next. Some infernal entity from the depths of the earth. My entire being urged me to flee, to run through the dim basement, up the stairs, and never look back. but by some unseen force, I was pulled forward. "Come, hither." I gingerly inched open the plank and was blasted with a full face of heat, like walking into a burning room. There was the crunch of crystals underfoot, salt, before being blown away. They must have formed a circle around Martin. Said man had his eyes darting back and forth between the demon and I, still holding out the vial. "You lured him here," Martin exclaimed. "You meant to ruin me." The demon stood opposite to Martin and took up the height of that room, clothed in flame, so bright I couldn't even look straight. "I sense a hunger within thee, for renown, fame, and fortune." Ignoring Martin, the demon whispered near my ear, hot enough to scorch skin, "Spin a tale of that good sir overindulging in his vices, leading to his untimely demise, and I will make you an illustrious man." Suddenly, back. "Creature!" Martin yelled, reaching to open his vial, but before his fingers could touch the lid, the vial was flung away by an unseen force, sending it clattering into the shadows. The demon let out a roar and engulfed the room in a maelstrom of malevolent energy. The orange light flared, and the shadows twisted into grotesque forms, writhing and clawing at the air. The heat intensified, enough to sear skin and fill the room with the acrid scent of burning sulfur. Christopher Martin sunk to the ground, clutching his hands to his chest, panting like a rabid dog. "My hands," he started weakly. "What did you do to them?" His fingers blistered and peeled away, revealing raw, red flesh. Barely able to keep my footing, I watched in sheer terror as the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around the demon's presence. Martin was lifted off his feet by an invisible force, his body flailing as he floated helplessly in the air. "Put me down, you motherfucker!" he screamed, attempting to twist his body out of the demon's invisible grip. "Our deal is not over. You don't get to do this to me." Then, having seemingly moved with too much force, Christopher Martin found the upper half of his body rotated 180 degrees from his bottom half. His vertebrae cracked violently, the wind was knocked out of his lungs, and his voice broke into choked screams. "For years thou hast enjoyed the luxury of our deal." The demon's voice was guttural, yet only now, when the time for me to reap mine own reward draws near, dost thou realize its true cost. Martin's body contorted as he tried to voice his protest, legs overlapping one another and arms being bent at unnatural angles. His skin stretched and began to tear, and I had no stomach to watch anymore. I covered my eyes, not bearing to see, but heard the sounds of bones snapping and the weak gurgle of Martin's throat, in between snivels and sobs. His breaths were short, gasps, but he was not gasping, he was begging, "Please." Then the sound of bones breaking overtook him. Finally, Martin was dangled as limp as a rag doll, silent as a corpse. Between my fingers, I saw blood and bits of flesh trickle to the floor, like water wrung from a towel. Martin's mangled form fell, hitting the ground with a sickening crunch. "In thy remaining time alive, thou shalt live in fear and ridicule," the demon declared at the gore. "Thou wealth shalt be taken, thou reputation soiled, thou family departed." The bones wiggled, then shifted, coming together to reassemble themselves. His muscles were forced to fuse back, and his skin stretched across his body, each layer knitting itself together, reconstructing the man from within to out. "And at which hour thou art miserable and alone." Martin's eyes burst open, bloodshot and red-rimmed. Having cried thy last drops of sorrow, he slowly crawled himself into a ball, relearning his own limbs. "That is when I shall cometh for thee." And he cried. Great, heaving sobs racking his frame as he gasped for air, wailing like a newborn. His clothes were tatters strewn across the floor, his golden watch abandoned, and spirit completely, utterly shattered. Paying him no mind, as if all in a day's work, the demon turned to me. "Be not afraid, mortal." Its voice would have been gentle had I not been paralyzed with fear. Christopher Martin was unable to bear the weight of his own greed, but I sense that you are different. Thou art one who understandeth the world and hath sacrificed like no other. With a wave of the demon's hand, I saw myself back at my company, furiously typing away, day and night, as my co-workers enjoy praise, promotions and bountiful successes. Thou labour is seen, all thy needeth be aid. Consider, scenarios of success flashed before me. My editor, my co-workers, my higher-ups, clapping for me, my name in articles, the journalist of the year. I am not temptation, my mother smiling with pride, my girlfriend on the altar. I am opportunity. Yes, my old self wanted to say. I would have danced for joy and thanked the demon on my bare knees. This was the breakthrough I needed, all I ever wanted, offered on an infernal palm. But the face of Christopher Martin, face pink and wrinkled like a naked newborn, tears, snot and drool trickling down his face all at once, gurgling on his own spit. I imagined myself after all the eminence, reduced to a pitiful wreck, consumed by the same shadow that swallowed Martin whole. I raised my camera once more. I snapped straight at the demon, the flash blindingly bright in the dark room. Then I ran. I ran like a man possessed, knees almost scraping the ground, out of the basement room, through the stacks of crates and apparatus, up the flight of stairs, and burst through the building door. My breath came in ragged gasps, and I did not have time to register the drastic cold before I set out again. I fled through the twisting, narrow alleyways, taking any route that led far away, until finally I arrived out in an open street. My lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out. Martin's ruined form was all I could see. I urged myself to go faster. In the quiet morning, there was nobody to alert, not a car to wave down, only the sleeping town blanketed by snow, unaware and indifferent. But at the side of the road, I found it, bright red and covered in snow. A payphone. I rang the emergency number. I do not remember what I said. Only it sounded believable enough for the state of Christopher Martin to make headline news the next day. I wish the same could be said for my report. The sun had not even set before it fell right back on my desk. We don't publish nonsense. My editor sighed. Didn't I tell you? Wait 3 weeks. Christopher Martin Wilde. And if I'm correct, so what if he dies? You're telling me you met a demon, and you're still fine, sitting here like a chump? Well, have you seen my Pack up. Son, a new voice. I'm Chief Executive Director of this department. Company policy doesn't tolerate liars. The next morning, my cubicle was emptied, and I was ushered down the stairs with a single, overflowing box. Passing me were a line of important-looking people. I recognized university deans, celebrities, millionaires, and every single one stared at my passing. I felt their eyes down each floor, from the building exit, even from inside my car. I felt their stare in the priest who denied my entry, at the church Martin most frequently donated to. I prayed for Martin in the parking lot. Despite his own efforts, or even mine, Christopher Martin's downfall already started to unfold. His first scandal involved drugs. Word spread that he'd been misusing his campaign funds to fuel his vices, leading to a penalty of millions in settlements. His wife and child left him. Then he fumbled his speeches, upset his own party, and set off a movement to have him replaced. So his position was revoked, divorce took away his assets, and at the end, not a single paper was reporting on his name. 3 weeks passed, and Christopher Martin was gone. I searched for work, but did not hear back from even a single company. Not even my family, girlfriend or friends would answer my calls. I was completely alone. And alone I remained. Even as I moved and changed my name, it was to start anew. Forget the past, but my dreams persisted. About that small, dark room, 6 feet below ground, with walls on all sides, and a blazing inferno in front of me. And when I look up, above me are 1,000 eyes, each larger than my entire being, staring and unblinking. Many decades have passed since that fateful day, and I've become washed up with time. Today marks the 3rd week I've been turned away from the food bank. I have been sifting through the trash for crumbs, which yields me day-old pizza on a good day and starvation on a bad one. But today was not just a good day. I think I've found a lifeline. While my right hand types my story at the library computer, my left hand clutches a mineral, red and green, smooth and shining, blood jasper. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with us. If you dare to explore further, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling tales of horror and the supernatural. Remember, the shadows hold endless mysteries, waiting to be unveiled. Stay tuned for more bone-chilling stories as we continue to traverse the eerie depths of the unknown together. Until next time, may your dreams be free from the haunting echoes of our tales. Or perhaps not.